People rarely choose the Sigma first. They don't pick him for their inner circles. They overlook him in groups, and they underestimate him in the beginning. But strangely, the same people who ignore him are the ones who later admire him, fear losing him, or quietly try to copy him. Why does the man who isn't chosen end up becoming the one everyone respects? What are they sensing in him that they don't understand yet? This video will expose the truth behind that paradox, the psychology that makes a Sigma invisible at first glance but unforgettable over time. If you've ever felt overlooked, misunderstood, or pushed to the sidelines, you're about to learn why that position holds more power than you realize. And if you click away early, you'll miss the part most people never understand about how respect actually forms and why the Sigma earns it without saying a word. Before we continue, answer this. Have you ever felt people notice your value only after you walk away? Drop the word unseen in the comments and subscribe to UltraWise so you don't miss the next chapter of this mindset. He doesn't perform for attention, so people overlook him until they notice his quiet strength. A Sigma male moves through the world without the need to announce himself, and that alone makes him invisible to those who only recognize loud confidence. While others compete for the spotlight, adjusting their tone, exaggerating achievements, forcing their presence into every room, he remains steady, calm, uninterested in impressing anyone. At first glance, people assume his silence means weakness, disinterest, or lack of ambition. They overlook him because he doesn't fit the template of the man who wants to be seen. But what they fail to understand is that he isn't hiding. He's observing. He isn't shrinking. He's conserving his energy for moments that matter. And he isn't trying to be chosen because he knows that anything he must perform for isn't truly meant for him. His quiet strength begins in the places where others overextend themselves, and while they burn energy maintaining their image, he builds power in the shadows. Over time, people begin to feel something different about him, even if they can't explain it. They notice how he stays calm in situations that unsettle everyone else. They see how he listens without needing to dominate the conversation. They realize that while others crave validation, he stands firm in who he is without asking for applause. And slowly, the dynamic shifts. The same people who once ignored him start paying close attention. They study the way he moves, the way he speaks, the way he solves problems without panic or ego. They sense that he isn't seeking their approval. And that creates an unsettling curiosity, because someone who doesn't need attention becomes someone people cannot easily read or predict. His lack of performance becomes a form of power. His restraint becomes magnetic, and his silence begins to speak louder than their noise. Eventually, his quiet strength exposes the truth. He was never overlooked because he lacked value, but because others were too distracted by superficial performances to recognize the depth standing right beside them. Only when the noise fades, when people grow tired of empty confidence and shallow charisma, do they start to notice the man who has been solid all along. He becomes the one they rely on in uncertainty, the one they respect when things fall apart, the one whose presence calms instead of competes. And by the time they realize his worth, he is no longer the invisible man in the background. He is the standard they measure others against. His power was never in being chosen. It was in becoming undeniable. He studies people before engaging, making him mysterious and hard to read. A Sigma male never rushes into connections. He enters a room the same way a strategist enters a battlefield, quietly, observantly, absorbing everything before making a move. While others speak quickly, reveal too much, or try to impress, he watches. He listens. He reads the energy, the dynamics, the subtle shifts in behavior. He pays attention to who dominates conversations, who competes for attention, who hides insecurity behind charm, and who speaks with authenticity. And because he waits before engaging, people struggle to understand him. They see his silence, but they can't read his thoughts. They notice his presence, but they don't know where he stands. This uncertainty makes him mysterious, and mystery always demands respect. You cannot manipulate what you cannot predict. You cannot control a man whose intentions remain invisible. This habit of studying people wasn't taught, it was earned. He learned early that the world reveals its truth to those who observe rather than rush. He noticed how quickly someone's mask slips when they think no one is watching. He saw how intentions shine through small details, the tones someone uses with strangers, the way they treat those who can't benefit them, the shift in their eyes when they're hiding something. While others get caught up in words and charm, he focuses on patterns. He doesn't judge immediately, but he remembers everything. The inconsistencies, the emotional tells, the subtle manipulations disguised as kindness. And he waits, because waiting shows who people really are. Given enough time, everyone exposes their truth, and by the time he chooses to engage, he already knows who he's dealing with. This slow, deliberate approach is why people find him hard to read. They project their assumptions onto him. Some think he's shy. Others think he's arrogant. Some believe he's uninterested. The reality is far simpler. He just refuses to reveal himself before he understands what stands in front of him. His unpredictability comes from his restraint. He does not react impulsively, share prematurely, or trust blindly. Instead, he moves with the confidence of someone who sees more than he says. And when he finally chooses to engage, his presence hits differently. People feel as though he already knows them, already understands the dynamic, already sees through their intentions. This makes him powerful without effort and respected without trying. Because the man who chooses when to reveal himself becomes the man no one can easily decipher, and mystery, in the hands of someone calm and intelligent, becomes one of the strongest forms of influence. He chooses independence over belonging, which sets him apart from the crowd. A Sigma male understands something most people never dare to confront. Belonging often comes with a price, and that price is usually freedom. While others bend themselves to fit into groups, soften their edges to be accepted, or hide their true nature to avoid rejection, he walks a different road entirely. He chooses independence, not because he dislikes people, but because he refuses to dilute who he is, just to be included, and just to save you. We have to overcome fears. This choice sets him apart from the crowd in a way that feels both powerful and isolating. He doesn't cling to communities, trends, or social identities to define him. He moves alone, not as an outsider seeking a place, but as a man who realizes he doesn't need one to feel whole. And because he chooses independence over belonging, people notice. They sense a kind of inner solidity that cannot be borrowed or faked. A man who doesn't need the group automatically stands above it. This mindset didn't come easily. It was shaped through years of watching how groups operate, how people compromise their authenticity to avoid being alone, how they tolerate disrespect to maintain connections, how they stay silent when they should speak just to protect their place in the collective. He learned early that belonging can become a cage disguised as comfort. In groups, people often follow rules they never questioned. They adopt beliefs they never examined. They seek validation from those who don't truly know them. And in all of that noise, individuality gets lost. The Sigma refused to let that happen. He realized that solitude, while difficult, offers something the crowd never can: the freedom to think, to grow, to rebuild without interference. So he stepped away, not in anger, but in clarity. And the moment he did, he began to evolve in ways the group could never follow. What people find so unsettling and so magnetic is that he does not fear being alone. He thrives in it. In solitude, he sharpens his mind, strengthens his identity, and builds a life that reflects who he truly is. And, because he is not dependent on belonging, he becomes immune to the pressure that controls others. He cannot be manipulated by fear of exclusion, guilt, or approval. He will not compromise his values to maintain connections. He will not betray himself to be chosen. His independence makes him unpredictable, and unpredictability makes him powerful. The crowd respects him because he represents something they secretly wish they had: the courage to stand alone and still feel complete. In a world desperate for acceptance, the man who doesn't need it becomes the one they admire the most. He refuses to compete for approval, forcing others to respect him on his terms. A Sigma male never steps into the arena where everyone else is fighting for attention, validation, or recognition. While others adjust their personality to be liked, stretch their boundaries to be accepted, or perform just to stay relevant, he remains still, untouched by comparison, unmoved by opinion. He knows that the moment you compete for approval, you hand control of your identity to someone else. Though he refuses the entire game, he doesn't speak louder to be heard, doesn't soften his truth to fit in, and doesn't chase the fleeting high of external praise. And because he stands outside the competition, people eventually stop seeing him as a participant and start seeing him as a standard. His lack of interest in winning approval becomes the very reason others give him respect. They can't manipulate him with attention, can't control him with judgment, and can't motivate him through insecurity. He sets his own value, and they either rise to meet it or lose access to him completely. This refusal to compete was built over years of watching what approval chasing does to people. He saw individuals twist themselves into versions they didn't recognize just to be liked. He watched friends build identities based on what others wanted, only to crumble the moment someone stopped clapping. He noticed how quickly admiration can turn to control, how people use validation to reel you in, then use withdrawal to weaken you. He refused to allow himself to be shaped by such a fragile currency. Instead, he built an internal backbone, a sense of self that remains steady whether he is celebrated or ignored. This inner stability is what makes him so difficult to influence. You cannot threaten a man with rejection if he has already accepted himself. You cannot lure him with approval when he doesn't need it. His independence becomes a kind of quiet rebellion, one that dissolves the power others try to hold over him. Because he isn't playing the approval game, he forces interactions to operate on his terms. People quickly realize there are only two options with him: treat him with genuine respect or lose him entirely. He will not lower himself to earn favor. He will not compromise his identity to make anyone comfortable, and he will not step into the hierarchy others are desperately trying to climb. His refusal to compete creates a psychological shift. It makes people try harder around him, speak more honestly, behave more carefully. They sense that he is the one person whose respect cannot be bought, begged for, or manipulated, and that scarcity is what makes it valuable. In a world full of people fighting to be chosen, the Sigma becomes the one everyone quietly gravitates toward, because he is the only one not fighting at all. He moves with purpose, not noise, and people respect the man who doesn't chase validation. A Sigma male understands that real strength doesn't need an audience. While others spend their lives announcing their goals, displaying their progress, or exaggerating their achievements for applause, he works in silence. His movements are deliberate, quiet, intentional, the kind of actions that don't require explanation or performance. He isn't interested in proving anything to anyone. He isn't concerned with appearing impressive. He focuses only on what matters: growth, direction, and purpose. And because he moves this way, people begin to feel something unusual when they watch him, a respect that forms without him ever demanding it. They can't label him, they can't predict him, They can't categorize him as one of the noisemakers. He becomes the exception in a world addicted to attention, and the exception always holds the most power. This purposeful quietness comes from experience. He has watched people chase validation so desperately that they lose themselves in the process. He has seen men inflate their accomplishments for admiration only to become trapped by the image they built. He has seen people brag about plans they never execute, promise changes they never commit to, and seek praise instead of mastery. He learned early that noise is often a sign of insecurity, a way to fill the silence where confidence should be. So he chose a different path. He learned to let his actions speak without broadcasting them. He built a life that didn't require external approval to feel meaningful. He discovered that the less he spoke about his intentions, the more powerful they became, and the quieter he grew, the sharper his purpose became. People may overlook him at first because he isn't loud, but eventually they notice something unmistakable. Everything he does leads somewhere. Every decision has weight. Every step has clarity. He doesn't waste energy trying to impress. He invests it in becoming more capable. This kind of discipline is rare. It commands respect without demanding it. People begin to trust him more than those who talk endlessly but deliver nothing. They turn to him in moments of uncertainty because noise collapses under pressure, but purpose holds firm. His quiet consistency becomes a form of authority. It creates a presence that stands apart from the crowd, and by refusing to chase validation, he becomes the man whose validation others quietly seek. Because in a world full of voices trying to be loud, the one who speaks only when necessary becomes the one everyone listens to. He holds his boundaries firmly, and that self-respect becomes impossible to ignore. A Sigma male does not negotiate his dignity. When he draws a line, it isn't a threat, a warning, or a plea to be treated better. It is a decision. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't justify his limits. He doesn't explain why something bothers him or why he can't tolerate certain behavior. He simply enforces the boundary with quiet certainty. And that firmness creates a shockwave people feel immediately. Most are used to others bending, compromising, or softening their standards to avoid conflict, but a Sigma's boundaries are built from self-respect, not emotion. They don't fluctuate based on who he likes. They don't weaken out of fear of losing people. When someone crosses a line, he doesn't argue. He adjusts their access. When someone disrespects him, he doesn't fight. He withdraws his energy. His boundaries are not loud, but their consequences are. This ability to hold firm comes from scars he studied instead of ignored. He remembers the times he let people slide out of empathy, only to be taken advantage of. He remembers the moments he tolerated disrespect because he didn't want to seem difficult. He remembers how often giving one more chance led to the same pain repeating itself. Through these experiences, he learned the truth most avoid. A boundary that requires explanation is not a boundary. It's a negotiation, and he refuses to negotiate his self-respect. So he built a different kind of strength, one rooted in clarity. Now, when someone tries to test him, he doesn't react emotionally. He simply steps back. When someone tries to guilt-trip him, he does not explain himself. When someone tries to manipulate him, he doesn't defend. He disconnects. His boundaries are enforced not through conflict, but through absence. And absence is a language people understand quickly. Over time, this consistency earns him something far greater than obedience. It earns him respect. Even those who don't like him recognize they cannot push him. They adjust their tone. They choose their words more carefully. They behave differently around him because they sense the standard he carries. He becomes the one person whose presence demands integrity, whose silence holds weight, and whose absence is felt instantly. People may not always understand him, but they never mistake his strength. His boundaries tell the world everything without him having to say a word. I know my worth. I protect it. And if you want a place in my life, you will respect it too. He evolves privately, and when people finally see his growth, it commands automatic respect. A Sigma male never advertises his transformation. While others post every small achievement, announce every new goal, or display every step of progress for attention, he does the opposite. He disappears, not in a dramatic way, not in a way that begs to be noticed, but in a way that signals something deep is happening beneath the surface. He withdraws from noise, distractions, superficial conversations, and people who drain him. His silence becomes a workshop. His solitude becomes a training ground. He rebuilds his mindset, strengthens his emotional resilience, refines his skills, audits his relationships, and studies himself with ruthless honesty. No one sees the late nights, the battles with doubt, the internal rewiring, the discipline he forces into his own life. While the world thinks he's stagnant, he is reinventing everything, and he does it without making a single announcement. His evolution is not for display, it is for alignment. What makes this process so powerful is the contrast it creates when he finally returns. People expect him to be the version they left behind, predictable, familiar, easy to categorize. But when they interact with him again, something feels different. His presence is more grounded, his energy is sharper, his boundaries are stronger, his decisions come with clarity that disarms those who once underestimated him. They notice. His confidence no longer fluctuates with external validation. They feel the shift in how he carries himself, how he speaks less but says more, how he listens with a stillness that feels intimidating, how he rejects old patterns as if they never belonged to him, and the world around him recalibrates. Those who once thought they had the upper hand now sense they no longer understand him. The ones who underestimated him now move cautiously. The ones who ignored him now pay attention. His growth forces them to. This is why people respect him instinctively, because his evolution is undeniable. It arrives all at once, like a sudden change in weather. No one saw the preparation, but everyone feels the impact. And because he grew silently, without asking for applause or validation, his transformation carries a weight that loud progress never achieves. People respect the man who rises without witnesses, because that kind of growth can only come from discipline, intention, and inner strength. He becomes the reminder that true power is built privately, not performed publicly. And when he steps forward as a refined, elevated version of himself, respect is not requested, it is the natural reaction. When a man chooses to grow in silence, the world only sees the final version, the one shaped by discipline, clarity, and the courage to evolve without applause. That's why a Sigma's transformation feels so powerful. It arrives without permission, without warning, and without explanation. And the people who once overlooked him suddenly find themselves facing someone they can no longer predict, influence, or diminish. His evolution isn't a performance, it's a quiet shift that changes the entire dynamic the moment he steps back into the room. Before you go, answer this. Have you ever improved so much in private that people didn't recognize you anymore? Comment the word ascend if you made it to the end, and subscribe to UltraWise so you never miss the next step in your personal evolution.